Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill position group grades for this Oklahoma Sooners football team rolling into 2025. Now, if you're an Oklahoma fan or just a casual college football fan that's on the fence of this Oklahoma team rolling into 2025, this is the episode that highlights why this Oklahoma team in the 2025 year can be a lot more dangerous than people appreciate because you start handing out these position grades, and there's one thing you notice. There are some elite aspects of this football team going into 2025, and the elite position groups of this football team are at some of the most important positions you can have football season. Now, are there question marks about this football team? Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be reflected in some of the position grades. But Dill, as some of the most important positions, Oklahoma's grade not at a very high level. Fired up to get into it before we do, and as always, to the Oklahoma fans, y'all let it fly in the comment section. The best part about doing this is going back and forth with the Oklahoma fans in terms of how you would grade these position groups. I'm in a little bit of a hot water with the Oklahoma fans. I hope this episode gets me out of that hot water. Fired up to get into it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, without further ado, the best position group on this football team rolling into 2025, quarterback. And I'm going to give him a straight up A. Now, Dill, this very well could be an A+. You know, the reason I held back with the A+ is a John Mateer coming from Pac-12 to the SEC. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country. I want to see it translate to the SEC, but I have zero doubts that he's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in this conference and, quite frankly, in the country in the 2025 year.
And honestly, I'm good. I'd probably have an A- just because I want to see John Mateer at the SEC level kind of dominate the way he was at Washington State. A- still a very good grade.
Yeah.
I gotta say, I think the leader of this team though is the defensive line, because I think you could very well put that as something close to an A+, because that is about as good of a unit as you're going to find in all the country.
Tied for A, and I'll get into why. But I also gave him the number 2 spot. They also get an A, and we'll get into the defensive line. I'm gonna throw out this real quick, though. As you sit right now, like, is John Mateer the quarterback that you trust most in this conference? And it's crazy to say that one of the best quarterbacks in the country that is transferring to a program of the caliber of Oklahoma is getting slept on. I kind of feel like that's the case here.
What
Like, look at how
him or Nuss are the only two guys that going in really have shown anything, and I think John Mateer's been much better than Garrett Nuss.
I would maybe throw in Lenore Seller. You know, you've seen flashes from some of the young cats too, but here's what I'll say. This is kind of what I was trying to get at, Dale. Everybody talks about Arch Manning taking over Texas. There's a lot of hype around DJ Lagway. There's a lot of hype around Lenore Sellers. There's a lot of quarterbacks that have some astronomical potential in this conference. And because of that, that's where the national media attention goes. And you look at John Mateer, who has proven himself arguably just as much as anybody in this conference at Washington State. There is a very good chance I could make you the argument that I trust John Mateer the most going into the SEC this year in 2025. Now, is that to say that he's going to be the best quarterback in the conference? That's kind of a wait and see. But you have a quarterback that allows you to win at the highest level of the sport. The other thing I note here, to me, he's that difference maker. You know, to me, there's a difference between a guy like John Mateer and a guy like Garrett Nussmeier. Like, I look at Garrett Nussmeier and say, Dylan, it's got to be not perfect, but it has to be good around Garrett Nussmeier if he's going to be a good quarterback. With John Mateer, look, it doesn't have to be perfect, and it very well might not be perfect for Oklahoma around the quarterback position. But when you have a quarterback who's a difference maker from an athleticism standpoint, like John Mateer, he can make a lot of things happen back there when it's not perfect, and that's really where my confidence goes with this Oklahoma offense. The combination of John Mateer, Ben Arbuckle, a difference maker at quarterback, one of the best play callers in the country. This offense could take a monster step in the right direction. Dill, number 2, defensive line. Look, you could throw them number 1. I wouldn't argue. I'll give you the T-box since you seem so high on the defensive line. Oklahoma's defensive line getting an A. How are we feeling about this unit?
Probably not a defensive tackle group that I trust more than this unit coming into
Yeah.
the season. And
Yeah.
again, you look at all these big dog teams who are struggling to find depth, and not only depth, but the top end guys. It's like I feel like with Oklahoma, you got three guys who are playing at like a really high level right now in Williams, Jackson, and Halton. And then you have some guys coming up like a David Stone, who, again, by all reports, and even what you saw a little bit last year, you certainly saw the flashes. If that turns on and the light kind of fully turns on for him, you got a four-man rotation that I think is
Yeah.
better than anyone else in the country. And then the defensive end room, you do have your guy. Like our Mason Thomas, I think is very slept
Yeah.
on. I think he can be a dominant player. I mean, who's going to fill in around him is
Yep.
probably the question, but there's certainly enough talent in that room that it's going to, I think, happen. This to me, you could make a very strong argument this is the best defensive line in the country, and they could be an A plus in my.
Very well could be an A plus in the middle of October. And the reason I held back from the A plus is who else is it going to be in the edge room? We know our Mason Thomas. Is it going to be Marvin Jones Jr., who you've seen the light bulb flicker, but you haven't seen turn on? And what about PJ Adebari going into year 3? Danny Okoye going into year 2? The ceiling for this unit is A plus. The ceiling for this unit is the best defensive line in the country. And Dill, what fires me up the most about this conversation is if you asked me, hey, you can pick two positions to have an A grade in going into a college football season, I'd probably say quarterback and defensive line. When you can dominate the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the football and you have difference making ability at the quarterback's position, you're a really hard team to beat. And that's kind of what you have with Oklahoma. Now, look, we're going to get into some question marks about this football team later on in this episode. You got two A-plus caliber units rolling into 2025 at the most important positions to get right on the football field. That's where it sits for me. That's the selling point for this Oklahoma team in 2025. Dill, number 3, this might be a hot take. I'm interested to hear what the Oklahoma fans feel, and you as well. We go linebacker A minus. This is probably the most misunderstood position group in the country here. There's so many people in the national media that get up and say, how does Oklahoma replace Danny Stutzman? Dill, it's not, I don't know if you have Danny Stutzman on this roster, but you have a committee of linebackers that are awesome. Kobe McKenzie, Kip Lewis, Kendall Daniels, Sammy. I'll put my hand up. I've been sleeping on this cat. Diving back into kind of getting these grades done. I originally had a B plus. Went back and looked at some numbers, watched a couple more games. My confidence with Sammy is extremely high. I think you got 4 linebackers that can be all SEC guys in the 2025 year. This unit, especially when you talk about Brent Venables running this defense, it should be a very, very good unit in the 2025 year.
And Kip Lewis is the guy for me still. I thought Kip Lewis really started to play really good football, playing more physically. You knew he was an athlete. You knew he
Yeah.
could cover a lot of ground. I thought his work inside the tackle box and being more dependable and physical and being able to take blocks on, I thought he took some massive steps. So to me, I think he's kind of ready to step in, take that number 1 linebacker role, which they obviously need to, or kind of address, if you will. But then you have 3 other guys who are really, really good. So I'm good with this grade. Again, I probably wouldn't put it up as an A, but I think an A minus.
Yeah, and it's the combination of I love the athletic profiles. I love the coach that is developing these dudes. And then here's the last thing. They're playing behind a defensive line that we just gave an A to. This is a hyper athletic linebacker room that's going to be playing behind a defensive line that is dominating at the point of attack. I'll just come out and say it. Kind of reminds you of that Georgia defense in 2021 and in 2022, where they had awesome defensive line play, and then they had hyper athletic linebackers that were flying around the field. This is what Brent Venables needs, and it took a little bit to kind of get going and getting the bodies into this program. When you think Brent Venables defense, you think dominant front seven. They have it going into 2025. Number 4, running back. I'm also going to give it an A minus. And Dill, here's my reasoning. And here's a caveat: is you got to use Jaden Ott like you went out and were very aggressive to add Jaden Ott into this roster. DeMarco Murray has been known to rotate backs a lot, sometimes to the frustration of Oklahoma fans. You went out and got Jaden Ott in the spring. He's a difference maker running back, arguably a top 5 running back in the country. Go use him like that. And then you have the other pieces, Xavier Robinson or Javante Barnes or Taylor Tatum. Like, I'm confident with any of those guys potentially being that running back too, but you have your workhorse. You got to go out and treat him like a workhorse in the 2025 year.
I mean, and Jade Knott, I do think adds a level of dynamic play, if you will,
Yeah,
into this room that they just didn't feel like they had. Like a guy who really does catch the ball well out of the backfield, can play well in space. Again, Xavier Robinson,
I
I
love him.
love what he does for that team in terms of
Yeah.
how he can grind teams down, like what he did in that Alabama game. I think that was a kind of his breakout game, if you will, and like showed what he's capable of. But Jade Knott, like you need running backs who can kind of play that all down, all weather sort of style. And I do think Jade Knott's finally.
And Dill, here's what bumped him up to an A minus. I originally had B plus, and then I'm diving back into Jaden and say, what a freaking fit in the Ben Arbuckle offense. You look at Jaden, we're Michigan fans. You look at Jaden in the Michigan offense and say, hey, look, Jaden Knott's going to be successful and whatever. You could put him in the wishbone. He'll be fine. But I think the ideal offense for a Jaden Knott kind of player is in space, being asked to catch footballs out of the backfield, being asked to get out to the perimeter. I think that's what Ben Arbuckle is going to ask him to do. Really good running back, really good fit in the offense. Give me an A minus for Oklahoma at the running back position. Secondary, I'm going to give a B, Dill, coming in at number 5. It wasn't a great unit. I think this is the unit that can take a step in the right direction. It's young. They were forced to play young players in the 2024 year, and you saw the youth at times for this Oklahoma secondary. Here's the thing, though. Number one, Brent Venables told us what he thinks about this unit. Didn't really go out and pursue anybody in the transfer portal, telling us he's got some confidence in the guys that are coming back. Getting Kendall Dolby back at that nickel cheetah position, huge. And then Dill, when you have a defensive line that I expect to be as dominant as Oklahoma's, my question marks about the secondary get washed away a little bit.
I probably would have gone B plus, honestly. I think I like this unit a little bit better than you. I
Yeah,
love the safety play. I think Robert Spears Jennings
he's
is
awesome.
awesome. I think
Yeah,
he's really good supporting the run. He's physical in the back end. You probably still are wondering who's going to really emerge and replace that kind of deep safety, free safety role. Because again, he was really good at that position. Billy
Billy.
Bowman
Yeah,
was awesome playing that role. He was
yeah,
taking the ball away. Peyton Bowen, I don't know that you've quite seen him play at that sort of level, but like again, certainly has the athletic profile you want. You've seen some good moments.
yes,
Probably the bigger question to me is that cornerback position and
yeah.
how good they're going to be there. Or like again, Jacoby Johnson's one that he's played a lot of different positions. I think they were kind of figuring out what to do with him. And I think he has the talent to be a really good boundary cornerback. So he's kind of the guy I'm watching. If he
So a
could,
little bit of it's a small cornerback room. Eli Bowen's not a big cat. Yeah, that was so crazy. Like, if you asked me, like, name one guy that probably needs a year or two to like get physically ready to play in the SEC, I probably would have said Eli Bowen. And he said, "Screw that! I'm gonna go out as a freshman and be an absolute dude for Oklahoma." Going into year 2, you're super optimistic about what he can be. I'm kind of with you. The cornerback position, because I love the cheetah position, love the safety position. You probably have a little bit question marks about the cornerback position, staying healthy, what the depth looks like. Again, they didn't go out to the portal and get anybody, though. So that's kind of telling me there's some sort of confidence in the unit they have returning. We just got to
like,
stop
they
getting.
played really good games. Like that
Yeah.
Alabama game, really, really impressive display from that back end
Yeah.
group. And again, they had their bad moments. Like LSU was not obviously a shining moment, I wouldn't say. But it was a young unit, and I think
Yeah.
it's probably more talented than a B, I think. So maybe again, just for the play and what you saw, you can keep it there. But
So many explosives. They got to stop giving up these big plays. It's such a good defense, and it's going to dominate almost every single snap. What gets them in trouble is giving up. You can go dominate 5 straight plays, but if you give up a big, they kill you. They kill you on defense, and you've seen that too much from this Oklahoma defense over the last couple of years. Can they finally fix that in 2025? And if they do, like I think we're talking about a top 5 defense in the entire country in the 2025 year. Dill, number 6 wide receivers, gave him a B minus. You have a guy in Deion Burks. The question is who else? This is another position group to me, though. I can see it moving up. It's hard for me to sit here and give anything higher than a B minus, going into 2025. Deion Burke stays healthy, you're probably working up to a B regardless. Who's it going to be? Who else is going to step up around Deion Burks? I know there's a lot of confidence in the transfer portal additions. They had both really, really good springs. It probably would have been if Giovanni Gibson did not have that injury at the end of spring practice, I probably would have given them a B. Or the young talent. They're like, I'm a fan of Ivan Carrion. And I'm a fan of a guy like Zion Kearney or Jacob Jordan. Which one of the young talent can kind of step up and be some of those rotational wide receivers where we know we have our guy in Deion Burks. Who else is going to play a big time role in this Oklahoma offense? Because you have some question marks there, I'm going to throw a B- grade on this.
Yeah, and I think that's fair because again, you just didn't like when they got their shots last year, there just wasn't good enough. A lot of those
Yes.
guys, like Ivan and Zion, like again, I know they were young players for sure, but like you didn't even see enough of the flashes. I didn't.
And here's what I'll say to maybe, and I know I'm going to bat for Oklahoma's wide receiver room, but here's what I'll say about that. They couldn't throw the football because they couldn't pass protect. Yeah, they legitimately just stopped throwing it because we
That's
don't
fair.
have it.
It's just like the whole
So
offense was so broken, it's almost hard to
it's
judge.
hard to evaluate, right? It's no, I hate to keep bringing up Michigan because I know we got a week 2 matchup here, but very similar conversation to where we are, where it's like it's hard to evaluate what you have in the pass catcher room because your offense was straight up broken last year. So it very well could be a better unit than I expect it to be. And here's the other thing, John Mateer, man. Like he's an elevator. He's an elevator. And so I think he has the chance to make these pass catchers better in the 2025 year as well. Number 7, last place, shouldn't come as a surprise. Offensive line, C grade. It was an F last year, maybe D plus. If you're giving Coach Bill B some leniency because of the injuries, maybe you go D plus, but it wasn't any higher than that. And this is the storyline, Dale. If you get B play from this offensive line, this has a very good chance to be a college football playoff team. With C play, it's hard to see them making the college football playoffs. How good can this offensive line be? I don't need it to be an A. It's not going to be an A, but can it at least be a B- to a B? And if you get that, this offense should be pretty dang good in 2025.
In the tackle play is still what really because I don't feel like it was done or enough was done unless again Michael Fasusi's maybe more ready than the average freshman.
Yeah.
And he certainly might be because Michael Fasusi, like he was that crown jewel in the recruiting class. He was, I mean, he's about as tackle athletic ready as you could want. But you look, Jacob Sexton and Jake Taylor were just so poor at that tackle spot last year. And Derek Simmons, I'm not sure he's like a guy you love starting in the SEC.
I heard that he had a good spring. Look, I'm kind of with you. Where it's like when
Wait,
Derek
when you
Simmons,
say you heard Derek Simmons had a good spring?
yeah, and so
Because I was like, we heard some of the things last year about Taylor and Sexton.
no, I see. That's the thing. That's the thing. Last year is like you knew this was a banged up offensive line going into the year. They were just playing musical chairs all of spring practice and all fall camp. We had not a damn clue what this starting 5 was going to look like at this time last year. And that's where my optimism potentially lies. I feel like the starting 5 that you see on the screen right now has a very good chance of being your starting 5 to start the year. Less injuries, more continuity. Does that matter here? And are the players straight up good enough? Right? Because that's a question we still have too. As much as we want to talk about injuries, when the players that they were throwing out there, quote unquote, healthy enough to play, weren't good enough.
Because
And
it was bad. It was bad right off the rip. It was like bad
yeah,
against teams like Temple that they should have been mauling. And
I
again, they
mean,
were obviously beating those teams.
and
But
you had to play like a Spencer Brown or Michael Tarquin, 2 guys that were just straight up liabilities in the SEC. So it's a mystery. I'm going to give them a C. I don't think you can give it any higher than a C right now. And this was really where I don't have a good answer. I don't have a good answer if it's going to be good or not. The thing that if I'm an Oklahoma fan, the thing I'm telling myself is staying more healthy, having a more solidified starting 5 where you're not moving guys from guard to tackle all season long. Does that allow this unit to play better as a whole? That's kind of where your optimism lies. But this is a wait and see grade for, I think, most Oklahoma fans. All right, we'll get out of here on that. Dude, there's some legitimate legs to this football team. If you answer some of the questions in terms of these position groups are at the bottom of this list, there's some legs because we know a lot of things about this team. We know a lot of things can be great about this football team in 2025. All right, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, this is my olive branch to the Oklahoma fans. I left Coach Bill B out of my top 10 offensive line coach rankings. And I understand the frustration, right? But I also looked at it and said, it was very hard for me to put him in the top 10 after that first year in the SEC. We'll see. A big year for him, 100%. All right,
Huge.
appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.